Hello, my name's Paul Bucknell. I'm here to introduce for you the Training for Next Step Counselors manual. We're going to be looking at the different pages, first pages within this manual. There'll be another video that continues on the last pages. We're here to provide training material for counselors or mentors to help those who are interested in full-time service or perhaps tent making. This material is great for a mission conference where people are going forward, or those in your church that are just interested in these materials. I'd like to introduce some of the resources that we have here for your use. The one that we'll be referring to in the next video is Charting Your Steps into Service. We have a blank page. We have one that has some directions on actually how to use that. We have a Next Stepper's Plan of Action, which is something you would give that Next Stepper after the interview to kind of follow up on their own, as well as a commitment card. These are all discussed in a following video. In the second page here of this manual, I'd like just to introduce that there's a number of things we're going to be going through right now. The overall process, we're going to be what we do within that 30 minutes, the 3 different levels here, as well as responsibilities. These are all things that we're going to go through right now in the following time. Our goal in the next 30 minutes is to do 3 things. First of all, help the next stepper exactly where they'll be in their commitment toward full-time service. Second of all, we're here to clarify the 2-3 next steps that they need to take to faithfully respond to the Lord. And thirdly, to pray with them to overcome those obstacles and reach the goal of getting to that position where they can serve the Lord. We're called Next Step because we're helping them take that next step. Like Abraham, we are trying to encourage them, inspire them to take that next step, and the Lord will help them with the following steps. Many things that they need to do, but we try to help them focus within that 30 minutes. We want them and yourself to be able to think in these 3 categories because it helps us in helping you as well as them to know where they are at in their own life. And we'll be going through each of these levels, but let me quickly introduce them here. Here is the first of all is the strongly interested. This is focused on general preparation. It's for those who maybe are recently called or not really clear about the different matters. They maybe have just thought about it. The second level is committed but unsure. They're stuck perhaps. They're frustrated. They sense that burden but don't know what to do. We want to help them on specific preparations. Thirdly, they're committed and on the way. In other words, they've already taken steps to get there. Maybe they're in seminary. They've already talked to the church about it. They've already done a number of different items. Well, we're focused on remaining preparations. So let's first of all think, what are we trying to do for them? The steps for the next steppers, we want them to go to a next step booth, and we have them make an appointment to meet with one of the counselors or mentors there at the counseling office. There they'll have a questionnaire, perhaps an introductory video, and then after that they'll be going to discuss in an interview in a smaller room with that person that kind of matches up to them. For example, if they would put level 1 or level 2 or level 3, we try to match up a counselor that has that type of experience with them. After the interview, they'll go back to the office and perhaps get a bag there with some resources in them, and you'll be introduced to what that is. This, for example, is when they're signing up. We want them to decide which level they're really at, and they put that right in there so we can help match it up with some basic information and where that office is where they need to go. We also would provide a questionnaire, as I've spoken of, a simple one, but one that helps us in working with them and following up. These are some resources that you can actually obtain as you would go there. For example, Take Your Next Step Ministry. If you click on that, it will take you to a web page, or Train Up Your Leaders, or download this material. Click here. It's very helpful to have it with you when you're going through the series. Training for the Next Step Counselor. As I said, this is a page that describes overall what we're doing. We've talked about the overall process of meeting with the interview and then helping them go through these 3 levels. meeting with the Next Step counselor, that guided conversation. Now, this is these 3 levels that we will discuss here. Of course, we'll focus on one during that discussion, one of these levels, with that timeline chart that will help us. So the responsibilities at the end of each interview, we want to personally pray for the next stepper. That was our 3rd goal. We want to give them a next step bag. We want to outline how we will be the next step team, not ourselves particularly. You can if you wish, but that's not expected from you as a counselor, to contact them and to have them sign a commitment card, which we'll discuss in the following video. So let's think, first of all, on this first guided conversation. In other words, if someone from level 1 would come to you, what would you say to them? These are the ones strongly interested. We have a whole page on this from the manual. Each of these levels have a number of questions which you can ask them to help begin that conversation as you spend a little bit time in them. These, of course, are the ones who have a burden but not very clear about it. So you're going to ask them questions. Where did you get your strong interest? What do you think God might be wanting for you? Is there some specific kind of service? How is this conference clarifying things? Or have you ever talked about this with anyone else? Maybe your parents. You see, we want them to faithfully follow the Lord's footsteps for their life. And as we help them, lead them, guide them, it helps them to bring to their focus what God might want for them. As we go through our conversation, we want them to identify things in their own life, maybe obstacles that will keep them from getting to where they want to go. Have you started to deal with any of these obstacles? What life adjustments do you see in your life that you need to change if you're going to get where you're going? See, God will reveal to them His special plan to them as they take concrete steps to pursue Him. So we want them to start taking those steps, start to identify them, start to follow up on them, explore what they need to do. Now, as we do a timeline, we might remind them in our latter conversation about missions, biographies, experience that they can obtain, the development of character skills, relational skills, a spiritual journal, all these things so that they can pursue and move on to closer to reaching that goal. This is a guided conversation for the first level. We also have a second level, the committed but unsure. These is a strong call to full-time service. They're stuck though, and they're frustrated. What can I do next? I don't know, or they're feeling anxious, or they're just don't know what to do. We want to help them to know how to listen to God and take these steps. And so if we're discussing with someone in the level 2, we have some other questions up here to help clarify that interest in calling into full-time service. Some of these questions will be the same as the first level. When did you get your first interest in serving the Lord? Or when and how did this happen? Could you clarify this? Have you shared this dream with others? What do you think God might want for you? And again, as we help them to identify these goals where they're going and how God's stirring in their heart, the obstacles will very clearly come to their mind, especially in this level, because they've started thinking about it and they have this burden, but often there's those frustrations. And so we ask them more specific questions. Have you taken any preparations toward missionary service? Have you talked to any mission agencies? Or are there any obstacles? And could you identify what they are? It might be finances, might be husband, might be parents, whatever it is. Are you in a mentoring relationship? Or would you be interested in reading different articles? You see, we want to keep this goal very clear in their mind and identify these obstacles. You know, on the timeline, you can choose on the right different obstacles, circle them, and write them out. We'll show you how to do that later. But again, help identify for them some of the goals that we want during this conversation for them. And that will help them so much. Our third level is one who's committed and on the way. We want to focus on the remaining preparation. They've already taken a number of these preparations. We want to help them go further on. Again, because we want to get to know these people, some of our conversation in the beginning will be the same. How did they get their first interest in the Lord? How have they been following up on that? And we're really excited to hear, and this is always so exciting to hear from these individuals, these next steppers, on how God is stirring up their heart and how far they're gone. And basically, we're just sitting back and encouraging them and pray for them. Sometimes we'll be able to help them, but really they've gone so far. They're already in contact with a mission agency. They've already taken further training. And so we still, though, want to go through there and see if there's some obstacles, some area that they're missing out on. There is a resource we talked about, training up these next steppers, because sometimes they're good on 3 areas, but they're missing one area, such as their spouse and their permission, or talking to their church about it, their mission agency about it, all these things. Or maybe they don't have that training, or maybe there's an area missing in their character. We need to be sensitive to the Spirit. We don't want them to miss it. We want them to maximize these last moments before they go on to full-time service. And I've found that one of the areas that often they haven't learned is how to disciple others. They haven't really been in a good mentoring situation, or they don't know how to disciple someone else. This is so important for whatever aspect of tent making or full-time service they're in. We believe that the happiest and most effective missionaries receive good support and guidance both before and during the service as missionaries. And you, as a counselor, as a mentor, can play an important part. Even though this is only 30 minutes, it's a significant point in their life, helping them focus, encourage them, and in their prayer, praying them on to the next step for their journey. Gone through these pages, make sure you go to the next video on charting your next steps, helping those interested in full-time service or tent making to take those next steps. Training for Next Step Counselors by Paul Bucknell. This is part 1 of 2, produced by Biblical Foundations for Freedom. www.foundationsforfreedom.net, releasing God's truth to a new generation.